tenders or whatever. I would teach chemistry, and then I was teaching organic chemistry at this trade university for about 3.5 years. And during that time, the band I was in at that time started to kind of take off a little bit. And so we were signed to a label and touring and all this stuff. And we were touring so much that we decided we all needed some form of passive income. And so we all had our little ideas, and mine was a YouTube channel. So this is 2014, so this is quite a while ago at this point.
What kind of music?
So that band was called The Lonely Wild. I would call it like indie Americana, I guess, rock and roll.
Okay.
I mean, for life, yeah. It was guitar-driven rock music. I was the drummer in that band, and so in 2014, like there was educational content on YouTube. There was, I mean, Khan Academy started way like 07, 08 or something like that. There was Crash Course. There was some stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I can do that. So I took my organic chemistry lectures and just delivered them to camera with a whiteboard. Just, here you go, OChem 1 and 2 students, and put them online, a little bit of branding and stuff. And it was received very well. It was the first thing in my life that just was instantly, people were appreciative, and, so I had a lot of positive feedback. And so I decided to do general chemistry tutorials with green screen and animations and things like that. And so eventually around mid-2016, it looked like the band wasn't really going to pan out, which was devastating. But the channel was starting to, it had, maybe 10, 20,000 subscribers or something like that. And it was enough to kind of go, all right, well, what if I put all my eggs in this basket? So for the next 4 or 5 years, I just started really relentlessly uploading educational tutorials. So,
like, it's absolutely possible human beings are a lot more than science, established science says right now, because the age keeps getting older. Like, I've talked about this ad nauseum. We talked about it yesterday or 2 days ago, whatever the last podcast was. That the human skull found in China that dated evidence keeps coming out that humans were on this planet for starting out way earlier than million-year-old human skull leads on to discovered by China in the 1990s has been digitally reconstructed. But this was found that long ago.
Okay, but
so like it's.
You realize that like hominid species have been around for millions of years. That doesn't make
this is Homo sapiens. This was a human. This was a Homo sapien human.
Denisovans.
This is the articles. Articles of reason. Yeah, there it is. There's the BBC article. That was from 2025. So we'll read the first paragraph of this. A million-year-old human skull found in China suggests that our species, Homo sapiens, began to emerge at least 500,000 years earlier than we thought. Researchers are claiming in a new study. Where's the new study? What does it say about the new study? The discovery published in the leading scientific journal Science shocked the research team, which included scientists from a university in China and the UK's Natural History Museum. So, it's a real study published in a scientific journal of a Homo sapiens skull that's 1 million years old. So, like, I don't see why it's controversial to be open to the possibility that humans could be way older than we thought, right? Like, sure. Science evolves all the time.
But right? There's a huge difference between finding a Homo sapiens specimen that's earlier than you thought, right? Jabeller Hood is 300,000. That's what that was my impression of how Homo sapiens is. But that in no way signifies that there was some kind of hyper-advanced structure or civilization or all of these other very outrageous claims, right? We know that hominids have been around for millions of years, right. Different species. So right. Homo sapiens emerging earlier than we thought. Okay, I mean, I'm open to it. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen that, but that doesn't in any way substantiate outrageous pseudo-archaeological claims.
Right. And when it comes to like some of the ancient structures that Graham talks about, like the ones in Indonesia, Turkey, Egypt, and even in the UK with like Stonehenge, it's like it is that there's a reason that it's one of the 7 wonders of the world, right? Is because it's like almost seemed like an impossible feat for ancient humans to be able to do, and that's why a lot of people, a huge subset of people in the world, believe like there's a logic gap there, right? It's like, this makes sense. Maybe we'll fill it in with God, or maybe we'll fill it in with aliens. I don't know, right? But doesn't seem to add up. It doesn't seem to make sense, which is why I think most people are so fascinated with something like to come up with all these crazy theories and ideas that may be bullshit, they may be bogus, but to be able to talk about them and discuss them and do podcasts on them, I don't think it's dangerous in a way.
Well, I don't know. Because, I mean, it depends. First of all, I don't know. So to go site by site, again, I wasn't sure what we were going to talk about here because I debunk so many things. Pseudoarchaeology is one flip we do.
Right.
I'm talking about anti-vaxxers and creationists and climate change and all these things. So, you know, I can't speak to specifics of each site. But to speak generally about for an academic, for an archaeologist to propose something about a particular site, that's academic science. There's no problem with that. And to have a discussion within the scientific community, that's happening all the time in every field. There's no problem with that. But the way that these grifters come at this, you know, all the archaeologists are closed-minded and they're idiots and they don't know about this and they don't know about that and they're denying this for whatever reason. That poisons the public against the scientific community. That is what leads to enhanced vaccine hesitancy and all these other things, right? Because the public can't perpetualize science. Right? They don't really think about this is what it's going to do, this is what it's going to do. They just think this general sense of the scientists who are close-minded, chills in the pocket, big whatever. Archaeology is insane term. That's the narrative that is bad. And so what you get is a public that is increasingly distrustful towards science, and that's when you get, you know, voting in administrations that put science deniers into power and things like that. So ultimately, what I want to say is that it is harmful. Now you can go into individual examples of one person saying this or that. Something might be defensible, but broadly speaking, it is
Not in my 20s at all. Even though I've improved my workouts and my diet over the years, I've still noticed a drop in my energy and motivation. One of my friends told me his son had a testosterone problem and told me he was using natural pill, and that's what I Mars met. See, men begin to see a drop in testosterone during the age 30, and even though your body still makes it, most of it can get bound up by a protein called SHBG, so even less of it comes available. Marsman is designed to help free up blocked testosterone so your body can better use what it already has. No synthetics, no needles, just natural ingredients like top cat oil, shilajit, vitamin D, zinc, and more. What I've noticed is more sustained drive throughout the day, way stronger workouts, and sustained energy. It's nothing like food jitters. It's like being switched on. It's made in the USA. It's vertebrae tested and it comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee. And for a limited time, our listeners can get 50% off for life, plus free shipping and free gifts. You can go to mengotomars.com and use the code NANY. That's NENGOTOMARS.com for 50% off and free gifts when you use the code NANY at checkout. And it's also available on Amazon. After you purchase, they're going to ask them what you heard about them, and please help support the show by telling them you sent it. So you're saying, by and large, over time, the public has become more distrustful of mainstream science, and I would say authorities just
simply by using the term mainstream science, it's extreme. I mean, that's not
academic science.
Well, I mean, there's academic science and there's the private sector, but there's no mainstream science. Right? There's science and there's pseudoscience.
Look, guts and brains.
There's ocean science, whether it is academic or, you know, that's the actual science, and then there's people who rely on science. They refer to it as mainstream science.
Making me work for it, hey?
Sure, that's how you success. That's the point. But he's not pushing the outrageous
Consider when you went wrong. I fought in many wars.
Financial agreements aspect of science, whether it be climate science, whether it be vaccine science, or pharmaceutical companies, and but that's even like geopolitics type stuff. Like,
yeah,
there's money and there's weird little financial incentives. entwined into all of that stuff, and that's where it gets swirly, and that's where it gets hard
Yeah.
to figure out what the truth
But
is.
that can also be used, number one, that can be used as a scapegoat, right? Blah, 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 big pharma, they're just saying that, and people believe you. And number two, financial entanglements for the frauds that are pushing these narratives. Right? They make money off of this stuff. So,
Sure, people can make money off of questioning power if they have a podcast or they're selling advertising. I mean, selling books maybe.
this idea that a scientist is in this incredible position of power or is doing something incredibly good, the vast majority of scientists are not paid that well, right? They're just doing what they're doing because they love to do science and discover things, right? So it's this way of painting the scientific community as this cabal, that's beholden to blah, blah, blah. It's a global scientific community operating in academia, in the private sector, under many different countries, many different political apparatus. There's no way to that is why the consensus of the global scientific community is what you go by at all times, right? Anything that is contradicting the global scientific consensus, that's what you want to be skeptical about. So you get one scientist to lie, absolutely you can. Andrew Wakefield and you're a doctor.
So, you think anyone who is questioning or skeptical of our global
Contradicting, yeah,
of the global consensus,
global scientific consensus, yeah.
what about that person?
You should be very skeptical of that person, right? You should. They are making claims that contradict the entire body of scientific knowledge. It doesn't 100% guarantee that they're wrong, but they're very unlikely to be right, and especially if they're not scientists themselves, they're almost So you can take someone's claims and go, all right, well, all of the science says no, but all right, say your thing, and 99% of the time they're trivially debunkable. Sometimes it's harder to debunk. You can really dig into it, but the idea that you can, you have scientists all over the world, and there's no way to buy off millions of scientists in different countries, all these things. It doesn't make sense economically, right? You can buy off one scientist, maybe a handful, so you can get papers that are, bought off by special interests. But ultimately, these are, when you talk about climate science and things like that, this is the fossil fuel industry that's trying to manufacture this. So,
Sure.
Again, it's pretty easy to spot the motives with things like that, Then with individual grifters, it's just anything, right? Someone's just trying to make a buck, where they can,
So, journalism, by definition, is being skeptical of power and being skeptical of the people in charge who are controlling things. That is the very definition of journalism. And so are you holding the people in power as your North Star of truth? Are you defending?
Scientists are not in tremendous positions. They're just people doing a job. Right, and so this thread starts to evaporate when you say, well, this government made the scientists do the thing, whatever. Which government? We got these vaccine studies. This one's from Sweden, this one's from China, this one's from Argentina, this one's from, which government are you talking about? The global, the Illuminati government? What are you saying?
Grants, scientific grants. That scientists, one of the biggest ways scientists get funded is by grants from pharmaceutical companies. And, we've had multiple, one in here 2 weeks ago, recently, was a in Montreal, Canada, if I remember correctly. And it was in the 90s, it was 1994. He got a grant from Pfizer to test a neurotransmitter, some sort of drug for Alzheimer's, and he was testing the neurotransmitters. He was using PET scans to detect the chemical reaction in the brain to this drug to see what was effective with it. And in grant agreement, he had to sign off that if the results were negative, he could not make them public. The results were overwhelmingly negative. The drug was not effective at all for Alzheimer's. It wasn't reacting. I think it was acetylcholine. That's what the toxin was he was looking for, to see if it was reacting to this drug. And it wasn't. He asked me to publish it. They said, no, you have to search on this. Agree. Legally, I'll publish this. And they ended up bringing that drug to market. And it probably made, who knows, billions of dollars. spend.
I'd have to look into that though, because drugs don't get approved all the time, right? You have individual you have independent institutions that are running clinical trials and drugs that don't get approved all the time. So this narrative that pharma is just like every drug I want will go to market no matter how harmful. It's just and I don't know the economics of anything.
That's probably not true. But
Yeah.
would you agree that it does happen?
I'm not sure. I mean, you'd have to give me an individual. I mean, you just did, but I'd have to look into it. I'd have to see whether this is just a story or what it is, because this is part of the reason that it's so disastrous what's happening under this administration, right? Under the guise of protecting public health, you just have RFK just firing half of everybody at FDA, CDC, all these institutions, and these deregulations, right? It's actually the precise opposite of what he pretends to stand for, right? These institutions are there to protect us from the private sector, and famously have, right? Thalidomide wasn't approved in America because the FDA wouldn't approve it. This kind of stuff. That's what these institutions are for. So, what would a pharma need to? I mean, first of all, opening itself up to all these lawsuits. So it's not like
They've been fucked by lawsuits.
it happens. I mean, and so it's just
There's more lawsuits against pharma companies. There's more money in settlements from pharmaceutical companies than any other industry, I think, on the face of the
possibly, and if well deserved, then great. But this painting of pharma as this unbelievable boogeyman with all the money in the world, right? Do you know that the alt health industry is significantly larger than the pharma industry?
alt health industry.
An untested, unregulated supplement industry, right? Yeah, it's $1 trillion industry.
It makes more money than the pharmaceutical
More money than pharma. Yes.
You got it. Yeah, I do know that it takes, and I've had multiple people, like scientists, drug researchers on here that have had companies tell me that it takes between like $10 to $12 million, or I'm sorry, 10 to 12 years to develop testing on rodents and all that stuff.
It's very stringent,
and it can cost $1 billion.
Yes, and only 1 in 10 drugs make it to market.
Right, so they have a huge financial incentive to push those drugs out, get those drugs out in the marketplace, and famously, there's billions and trillions of dollars of settlements from these pharmaceutical companies that are making for time, their marketing malpractice, not any farther than the opioid crisis. So, I mean, my point is like to default, to have that be your default, to want to protect or to fight for those people, like to want to be the that's attacking people who are attacking those billionaires and those trillion-dollar companies who are literally only looking out for their bottom line, and they don't give a fuck about a middle-class person who can't afford a really fancy doctor who's having to go checkups every 6 months or whatever. Bare minimum that can't afford healthy food, they have to eat out. It's the insurance companies and these pharmaceutical companies that are raking in trillions of fucking dollars, right? And
This is why I'm trying to tell you about the alt health industry, right? They're making more money and they're peddling lies and selling. So everything you're saying about testing and everything, these are products that are not tested on anything. It's not labeled as medicine, so they don't have to do anything. And there's all these, so there's not only supplements that actively harm people because they're not tested. They don't go through any clinical trials. There's no safeguards of any kind. So you want to talk about that one drug that slipped through clinical trials and some, unforeseen, not that, pharma went through the checks and balances. Here we go. We did these clinical trials and something didn't show up and somebody got harmed. Okay, well, lawsuit, great, go for it. Get the money. But we're talking about an alt industry. All of these products are completely untested. They do measurable harm, and they pull people away from legitimate medical attention. That ivermectin would be, although that is a real drug, though ivermectin craze would be a great example of that.
So this is Google's AI or whatever. Robert global wellness industry, which includes alternative health, wellness, tourism, nutrition, and personal care, is significantly larger than the pharmaceutical industry. Estimates place the global wellness market at over $6 trillion, which is several times larger than the estimated $1 to $2 trillion global pharmaceutical. So this is not massive market share global wellness market.
When you think about it, how many people do you know are
break this down by countries. Sorry, what were you saying?
how many people do you know that are regularly taking tons of prescription drugs versus how many people do you know that follow a bunch of health influencers and buy the supplements that
Everybody I know has been on fucking Adderall since they were like 12, and they were prescribed it.
There's some oversight on that. Yeah, I mean Adderall I think was probably overprescribed in the 90s.
Yeah, I think that's a huge problem.
Yeah. So this is what I'm saying. Like, people, Dave Pharma Show, whatever. There are things that you can criticize pharma for, right? And so it's sure sometimes they try to influence doctors to prescribe off-label, right? They'll say, well, this drug is for this, but it might work for this. Can you prescribe it for that too, right? There's a little bit of that kind of boiling going on, and call it out. I don't care, right? I'm not here like
there's absolute characters in alternative health.
It's almost
Jason Stone, another fucking Scientologist. I treat him fun, brag metal, jazz.
yeah.
I mean, he's selling like hyperbaric chambers and cold plunges, and he's calling it 10x health. Like, it's just common.
This is what I'm saying, is that this stuff has taken off because of the cartoonish degree to which people vilify pharma. And so, look, if I can come back and we can like do a really, really in-depth, give me all the cases you want to talk about.
And we're staying high level.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, there are things you can criticize pharma for. Go for it. It's no problem. But the cartoonish villainization is what has propped up this enormous health wellness industry that is just full of grifters. I'm sure that's not driven snake oil that is actively harming people.
Springtime means it's time to clean out your fridge of leftovers and old condiments. And it's time to restock those shelves with some refreshing selections from ButcherBox. For over a decade, ButcherBox has led the industry with vegan seafood that's antibiotic-free, hormone-free, and independently fair. Because when it comes to fueling your body, quality is extra. It's everything. Clean, whole protein means better support for strength, metabolism, and that steady all-day energy we're all chasing. ButcherBox sends over 100 premium protein choices like grass-fed beef, free-range organic chicken, grape-free pork, and almonds. Everything is hormone and antibiotic-free, and it all meets the same strict requirements, whether it's filet mignon or chicken nuggets. I love being able to customize my box. I usually spring for pork chops or salmon, but sometimes when I'm feeling frisky, I'll throw in some chicken thighs for me. And everything shows up frozen, vacuum sealed, and ready to go. So no grocery store shenanigans. They're a certified B Corp, which means they care about how animals are raised, how the team is treated, and how they impact the planet. As exclusive listeners can make their choice between chicken breasts or top sirloin for a year, or ground beef for life, plus $20 off. You go to butcherbox.com/Danny. That's right, your choice of chicken breasts or top sirloin for a year, or ground beef for life, plus $20 off your first box and shipping costs. That's butcherbox.com/Danny. And don't forget to use our code so they know we sent you.
Even the grifters themselves, right? Me and Dan Wilson did a debate against Pierre Corey and Steve Kirsch in New York.
I watched that, bro.
Yeah, and so one of them, Steve Kirsch, went blind in one eye because of a supplement that Peter McCullough, the Spike Detox supplement. This is a supplement that is completely untested. He took it and he went blind in one eye, and yet he's still on this anti-vaccine crusade, right? Pierre Corey, another guy, just made a boatload off ivermectin. Frontline doctors made a boatload off ivermectin, saying this is this wonderful cure-all drug. You can't get COVID. Take it as a prescription every month, right? Every month, keep spending money. You'll get it, and just how many thousands and thousands of people that's died of COVID because they didn't get the care they needed, and then it was too late. That's the real villain. So criticize pharma for the things that it does. That's fine. And I'll do it with you. But this is the real villain right now.
I think it's fuck both of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to attack them.
Pharma makes real drugs that save lives.
That's true. So, but I'm also sure there's a subset of the people in the alternative health system are also selling shit that saves lives, right? So the difference is one of them is not intertangled with the United States government, right?
How does that make it any right? That's when you have grifters that are just selling snake oil. Why does it matter if they are or are not propped up by any government, right?
Well, it just has
to make money.
It's because those guys they get shuttled into the public, and they work with insurance companies, and basically every run-of-the-mill family that goes in for a routine checkup gets prescribed these things. job is to take primary care physicians out to dinner, take them out to bars, take them out to strip clubs, and befriend them and convince them to bring I got in like the 2000s, and was doing this job, and it's like your job is to get them to prescribe more shit for symptoms. Like you prescribe this for more symptoms and prescribe it more because they get these kickbacks and insurance companies. And if you really like dig into it, it's insanely corrupt, and it's so fucked up that it's in our healthcare system. It's baked into the healthcare system that is supposed to be taking care of everybody in the United States, especially the people that are lower income, which I think really pisses me off. And the fact that the United States is literally, I think, the last or second to last of the list of outcomes in the world countries.
But to be clear, we do need to very strongly differentiate between medical science and the health insurance industry. The health insurance industry is rotten to the core.
Yes.
That's very...
Minute.
Yo.
Yo. Hey, Devin.
Yes, sir.
You told Amber that you had tip cards?
I will have some this afternoon.
Okay, were you bringing them?
Yeah, I'm gonna drop them off.
Alright. Dude.
Bet. Is she working?
Yeah, she's here.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll have some tonight. Y'all be patient. Alright.
She was just asking. I didn't know nothing about it.
Alright, bet.
Alright.
very different thing, right? There's a difference between what is this drug, what does it do,
right,
who can it help,
right,
and who gets it
100%.
For free.
100%.
These are very different things. And in America, the only industrialized nation to not have socialized medicine, that's an enormous problem. But you can see how these are contradictory lines of thinking, right? The health insurance industry is terrible because it disallows people from getting the medical attention and the drugs that they need, the ones that work, that actually work, the ones that some would criticize Big Pharma for producing in the first place, right? The health insurance industry, that's where you get the Luigi Mangionis, so you get some vigilante justice going on.
Right.
So I'm right there with you on the American health insurance industry.
Mm-hmm.
That's horrible stuff that's going on. That's very different from the medical science, the chemistry, the molecular biology behind what is a drug and is it going to work. Right? That
Also, the nurses that are working for these companies in their labs, trying to do their best. I'm sure that's true. That exists. They're trying to do their best to actually create good medicines.
So this was definitely gators, normal gators. You see what I see? What is that thing, dude? It's running the Turok, the dinosaur hunter. That's a straight up dinosaur. Yeah, look. I think he's friendly. I don't think he minds very much. Look. It's actually a Spinodentitis. I think I might punch him in the head. You want to try? Oh, look at that big boy. Look at that thing. He's not very hostile. Because those are definitely gators, normal gators. Do you see what I see? What is that thing, dude? It's a Turok, the dinosaur hunter. That's a straight up dinosaur. Yeah, look. I think he's friendly. I don't think he minds very much. Look. It's actually a Spinodentitis. I think I might punch him in the head. You want to try? Oh, look at that big boy. Look at that thing. He's not very hostile. Because those are definitely gators, normal gators. Do you see what I see? What is that thing, dude? It's probably a Turok, the dinosaur hunter.
The uncontacted tribe were speaking in
Guys, uncontacted tribes have no idea the outside world exists. Over the course of thousands of years, these fascinating groups have evolved while hosting Explorers for the Joe Rogan podcast.
Hey, baby.
I just had a dickhead moment. I just had a dickhead moment. Oh my god.
Oh, what happened?
So like, as soon as we leave your neighborhood, like that turn I made earlier today,
Mm-hmm.
the left turn I made. So
Mm-hmm.
going down that way, you have all the stop signs and stuff. Somebody got to stop, and somebody goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, you're so
Mm-hmm.
so like, just now we all stopped. Somebody had already went. So no, on three, somebody had already went. So me and another truck beside me, we stopped. I stopped for 2 seconds and I just drove, realizing that the next person was supposed to go. I felt so embarrassed because the other truck that was beside me, he waited like a good boy.
Damn.
And I just said fuck them.